Byrne. I'm the State Assemblyman for the 94th Assembly District. First, permit me to thank all of our legislative colleagues in attendance for participating in this press conference, as well as members of the media in attendance, both in person and virtually via Zoom. Senator Borrello and I have been working on this issue for a while. I know Senator Borrello has a committee meeting later to attend, so I'm going to make some brief remarks first before I introduce him to say a few words, and then I'll close up and we'll try to answer as many questions that the media may have. Back in March of this year, both Senator Borrello and I had started working on proposals to address some of the very serious and growing concerns surrounding Governor Cuomo's book deal, the same deal that permitted the governor to write and sell a self-serving book about his supposed leadership on the COVID-19 pandemic during said pandemic. Through working together with Senator Borrello, we have adjusted our legislation to the point where we now have matching bills in the Assembly and the Senate. That's A7107 and S5108, respectively. Earlier this week, we learned from reports on the governor's tax returns that he is expecting to haul in over $5 million from this book deal. The terms of the book deal are still not entirely clear, but the development of this book is also subject to current investigations for the inappropriate use of government staff to write or edit the book. And it's worth noting this governor is already the highest paid governor in the state of New York. Again, I do want to introduce Senator Borrello so he has an opportunity to say a few words and hopefully answer some questions as well. So with that, I'll introduce my friend and colleague, pleasure to work with him, from the mighty 57th Senate District of New York, Senator George Borrello.
Thank you. Thank you, Assemblyman Byrne. Thank you very much. I appreciate everybody being here, my colleagues, of course, Andy Goodell, not only the floor leader, but also my partner in Chautauqua County. It's good to be here today. You know, I have introduced this bill a while back because, for me, this is an anti-corruption issue. We can't have statewide elected officials writing books about their experience while it's still happening. And why is that an anti-corruption issue? Well, I think it's very apparent. First of all, the governor had 5 million reasons to withhold information on the nursing home data. He wrote a book championing his handling of the nursing home tragedy now. In fact, back in October on CBS This Morning, he actually touted the fact that New York State had among the best numbers when it came to come to death in nursing homes. And the reality is we were among the worst. So if the correct information had been out at that time, would that have had an impact on his book deal? That's the question. That's why this should not be allowed, not just for him, but for anyone. You know, right now, as members of this legislature, we are prohibited by the rules set forth by JCOB, his ethics commission, from accepting anything over a value of $15. Yet the governor can write a book, and a lobbyist could buy a pallet full of those books and just throw them in a dumpster, which, by the way, is where they actually belong, and then he gets the value of that. He gets the value of all of those books that had been sold as part of his $5 million book deal. This is wrong. We need not only transparency as to what is happening and when it happened, and we need to understand, did this book deal influence the withholding and the manipulation of data when it came to our nursing home deaths? And going forward, let's never give any other statewide elected official, especially a governor, the opportunity to do something like this and have the ability, either directly or indirectly, to influence state information on something as important as the life and death of our seniors in order to potentially impact his ability to profit from that book. That's what this legislation is about. That's why it's important. We have a lot of hypocrisy in state government. It happens every day here. But the fact that a $16 hamburger is a violation of the JCOB law and a $5 million payout to the governor is absurd, and that's why this bill is important. And I certainly appreciate Kevin Byrne for championing this, everyone else that supports it, and this needs to go forward so we can, again, restore the people's confidence in a government that's accountable to the people. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. So why is this type of change needed? You just heard from the Senator a couple of very concrete examples. I would suggest that the audacity of the governor to write and sell a book mid-pandemic is incredibly insulting to many New Yorkers. But that alone is not reason enough to pass these bills and this type of legislation. His administration hid COVID-19 nursing home mortality information from the legislature and the public during the release of this book and his tour promoting said book. It's subject to investigation and raises serious questions as to his use of government resources to personally profit from Governor Cuomo's COVID leadership book. While many New Yorkers were still reeling from both the financial and negative health impacts from this pandemic, the governor was reportedly hosting private webinars with large groups of employees at firms that also happen to have state contracts. While the publisher of the book may suggest the governor did not receive direct compensation for those particular events, we know now through his filing that he's already set to benefit with more than $5 million in pre-tax dollars in compensation. Reports have also suggested that the governor did, in fact, use state government salaried employees to assist him with writing or editing the book, raising questions about the development of the governor's book already running afoul of some of our existing laws. And lastly, but not least, Citizens for Responsibility and Ethics in Washington, CREW, a public watchdog group, not a conservative one, mind you, filed a formal complaint with the New York State Board of Elections against Governor Cuomo for violating the law. CREW found evidence how the governor used campaign resources to promote and sell his book for personal profit. So this isn't just about the reported use of government resources, but potentially campaign resources as well. Yes, the governor's book is why many of us are here, and it's what prompted many of us, to first look into crafting this type of policy change. But it's also about supporting good public policy and needed reform. As the senator said, this is really an ethics reform bill. It's about combating corruption. History provides us examples of where politicians have been subject to scandal due to inappropriate dealings with book deals. Case in point, one former U.S. House Speaker, James Wright of Texas, this was back in the late 1980s, he was ushered out of office, surrounded in scandal. In New York State, Jacob has proven to be relatively ineffective in properly overseeing this type of activity. That's my opinion. The governor is already the highest paid governor in the state of New York. He is a full-time elected official, and as a full-time public officer, he and all other statewide elected officials, as well as other full-time government appointees confirmed by the Senate, should understand that this type of policy change would be a condition of their employment with the people of New York. If they want to write and sell a book, God bless, they can do it, and they can profit from it after their term of public service, but not during. Let me close with this point. Of the 50 different states in the United States of America, no other state has this problem. Why is that? That's because no other governor had the audacity to sell a self-serving book in the middle of a pandemic that forced people out of work and on unemployment if they could actually access their unemployment, that prevented New Yorkers from worship and prayer at their respective houses of worship, and that robbed people of mourning for lost loved ones in a traditional setting, also affecting thousands of grieving families who lost loved ones to COVID-19 in our state's nursing homes. Many of our colleagues in government, both Democrat and Republican, have publicly criticized the governor's book deal and have alleged corruption and potential criminality. They can follow up on those words with action by supporting our bill today. I welcome support from all of our legislative colleagues. And with that, I'll open it up to questions. I think we have some virtually as well.
So just to be clear, you're trying to prohibit elected officials and certain appointed officials from writing and selling. How do you prevent somebody from writing down their thoughts?
Somebody wants to write down a journal, a diary, and then compose it later, but to go into a contract, I think, with a publisher during their time of office, that's really what we're looking at here. They want to do that afterwards. And I would bring in, case in point, I'm less familiar with other state policies and governors, but most presidents that I know of, I typically read their memoirs after they leave office.
I'm sorry, I just want to answer that, if I could just respond to that. You know, keep in mind that the whole point is he did this while this was going on, okay? And that is what gave him the opportunity, potentially, to manipulate information. If you wanted to write all this down, quite frankly, let's face it, look at the situation right now. If he wrote all this down in this book and put it aside like he should have, I have to believe a few pages might have changed by now, after revealing the fact that we are among the worst when it came to nursing home deaths, not the best. So to do it while it's happening, while the things are still changing, I mean, look, we have cancer doctors every day treating cancer. Are any of them writing a book how they cured cancer right now? I don't think so. They are treating cancer because that's their job. and they realize that they haven't cured cancer. This governor felt that he defeated the pandemic last July, and that's the problem.
So then I assume the subject matter is what's in question. An office holder would be free to write a novel while in office.
You know, and I think in the original version of the legislation, yeah, if somebody wants to write a children's book, that's one thing. But the bottom line is, even then, you certainly have an ethics issue, because, like I said, you know, you could have lobbyists buy pallets full of these books, trucks load, and especially if they're being paid by the copies sold. Isn't that an influence now, to be able to have somebody go out and buy those books and just do whatever, give them away, throw them in a dumpster, like I said? So even then, I think there's an ethical concern with that.
I would just add one more thing to that, sir. I'm just speaking for myself here, but when the governor first started toying with the idea of writing a book in his daily press briefings, and he talked about, I think it was maybe June of last year, I didn't really have an objection to it at the time. This is a life-changing moment, right? We're going through this unprecedented event in our state's history. But I think looking at it now, I also thought, okay, you're going to write a book. You're probably going to publish it once the pandemic is over and people are back to work. That's not what he did. And I think it forced us to look more into the issue, and it shined a light for this needed reform on a broader sense. And again, highest paid governor in the country, I think he's well compensated. I don't think he needs that outside income.
Jacob did tell the governor to not use government advisors to help write the book. Apparently they did work on it on what they say was a volunteer basis. Do you think there needs to be some sort of reform to the way Jacob is operating here? Because ultimately they did sign off on a book that had a contract for only $5 million.
I think Jacob has, I know, made statements I've read in the press regarding the need for the commission to go after. I think one of my colleagues, Michael Oller, has a bill that goes after that specifically. I would say this is an example of them being ineffective. Their staff did something. I don't think he's following the conditions of the agreement that let him do the book. Quite frankly, I think the title of the book runs afoul of some of the conditions that I read about. But some of the terms of the book deal still need to come to light as well. But certainly we can talk about Jacob and reforming that. I think this is a very specific reform that would target those statewide public officers.
Obviously, you're going to need support from the other side of the aisle to actually pass this. Are there any names that you have off the top of your head of people who are on the fence or on your side as far as this measure goes?
I can tell you in the Assembly, I've spoken with members of the majority. I'm not going to betray confidence by giving someone's name until their name is actually on the bill. There's definitely interest, and all you have to do is read through my colleagues' social media accounts. I'm not the only one to call for the governor to be impeached. There's a lot of members of the majority that have called for resignations and have made a very big issue about the governor's book deal. So words are good, action is better. Sign on to our bill and let's make it happen.
Were any of those majority members invited to today's event?
I don't believe so. I would welcome them, though.
A couple years ago, when the Pay Commission first approved the lawmakers' board of salary boost, and there was, of course, the ban on asset income, the governor was very vocal about supporting that ban on asset income for the legislature. What do you make of that now that you see this $5.1 million book deal, and money's going to go in the trust, some's going to go, you don't need it, but what do you make of those statements in the past where he said, I support a ban on asset income, and he said that specifically Republicans would not be in support of that?
I want to answer that, but I can see Senator Borrello really reaching for the mic, so I'm going to let him go first.
Sorry, I apologize. Well, look, as someone who has outside income, my outside income comes from my private sector career, where I employ over 200 people, taxpayers like myself. It's not outside income because of my job in the Senate. That's the hypocrisy. He's saying, if he's the governor, he's not writing a book if he's not the governor, right, about his leadership. So the bottom line is, outside income, those of us that actually have skin in the game in New York's economy, the ones that are actually part of the economic engine of our state, I have a disagreement with him on that. I think we should, the reason that we have the most business-hostile state in the nation with the most regulations, the highest taxes, is because most of our colleagues have no idea what it's like to have to make a payroll or have to show up to work every single day, not by Zoom. And that's why we have one of the worst places to do business in the nation here in New York State. So my point is two, I guess. Number one, the governor's being a hypocrite. He's taking a huge outside income. That $5 million is more than 20 years of his salary. as the governor, as the highest paid governor in the nation. So think about that. If he's going to ban outside his income, let's start with his.
I just say ditto. I don't take outside income. I just want to be, but hypocrite, I don't like that, using that word in politics too much because it gets thrown around a lot. Absolutely. Absolutely hypocritical. I believe in a citizen legislature. I don't want a ban on every elected official, the library trustee, the local town council person that wants to do a book on carpentry. You know, they should be able to do that. But you got a governor who's the highest paid governor in the nation. He's already compensated well enough, and if he wants to do this book, again, this proposal would not prevent him from doing that after his term is over.
I'm sorry, I have a somewhat related question to you, Mike. Today, May 19th, is the great reopening of New York. The Capitol is still closed. I wonder what you think about that. And also, what is your interpretation of the mask policy? I noticed when I walked in, there's still signs that you have to wear one, but I see some of us, I guess, including me, who are fully vaccinated, are we allowed to go around without one? How are you guys handling that in your workplace and with the Capitol still being closed?
I would say personally, open up the Capitol.
Amen.
Open up the Capitol. It's the people's house. We should open up the Capitol. I'm fully vaccinated, 2 weeks post the second Moderna shot. Tuesday happened to be my son's first birthday, so it's a very, very big day. It's been confusing for a lot of folks. I've reached out to the health department earlier this week because businesses are confused. They're hearing the President of the United States say one thing, the CDC say one thing, and then, yes, the state can always have stricter guidelines, but it's confusing, and it's confusing for their customers that come in, you know, that are, quite frankly, some are irate because they feel they don't have to wear the mask, they've been vaccinated, and it's not fair to make the small business owner the frontline enforcer for the governor. So I'm hoping that they come up with more information today. I would say also our scout camps and summer camps, they need that information as well because they've been trying to plan for the summer. There's a lot of different issues that we need more details on.
What are you telling your staff, and what do you plan to do if you go on the floor later today?
For me, I try to, right now I do my best to be spaced wherever possible just to make people, just to be considerate of everyone else. If I go on the floor, I'm pretty sure that Wayne Jackson, the Sergeant at Arms, will ask us to put a mask on. I respect the heck out of Wayne Jackson. I will put my mask on. Again, I would say if the speaker says that and the Sergeant at Arms asks me to put my mask on, I will be respectful to put my mask on, but that's not a conference position. That's just me personally.
Was there any guidance that was sent out specifically for workers at the Capitol and at the LOB and the state offices about, you know?
I'm glad you brought that up because that was my first concern. I checked my emails over the weekend, like I think most of us do. I got up first thing this morning, looked for any kind of a guidance from OGS or from the Secretary of the Senate, and there was none. So I think it's a, and the interesting thing about that is that we have the ability to set a policy. I mean, look at if I own a business. If I want to make people wear masks for the for the rest of whatever, that's my privilege. If it ruins my business, that's my fault. But this is the people's house, and we have to ensure that we're doing things that are fair and equitable, but also safe. But the bottom line is, we had the governor. I find it interesting that if this is the first time ever that the legislature decides not to follow the governor's orders, they've done it for the last 15 months. They followed it from the letter of the law. They extended it indefinitely, his ability to continue to have these executive orders. But today is the day they draw the line on the mask mandate. It just seems, again, hypocritical.
I saw you nodding your head about reopening the Capitol.
Yes.
About it, the barriers coming down, the State Street entrance being reopened.
Yes.
State Street itself being reopened. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, and I did a post about this last week. I walked out of my hotel and I saw those barricades, and I said, it's time to reopen the Capitol. Again, this is, look, everyone assumes risk when they go to work. We don't want to put anybody into any unnecessary risk. But, as legislators, we love the idea, while back of being so-called frontline workers. Well, that also comes with responsibility, not just privilege.
Let's try the bill again. Close to everyone.
So based on the current status of mask mandate, do we assume all of you are vaccinated with your mask?
I'm sorry, we couldn't hear the question.
So would it be a safe assumption that all of you are vaccinated, since unvaccinated people are required to wear masks?
I just spoke for myself.
Yeah, I mean, I think we still have a right to privacy in New York State. I'm not going to discuss my personal medical history, but I think we're all looking to follow the rules.
What I do want to go back, if it's okay, I know there were some other questions from the press about the confusion with the mask mandates. One of the examples that I specifically brought up with the Department of Health is when they talked about exemptions where masks would still be required, they've been somewhat specific, but then there's usually an et cetera at the end of that press release somewhere. Hospitals, schools, I don't know, what about daycare? I'd like to know if staff have to wear daycare. And that's kind of an important question for folks. And I've gotten no answer. So I would hope that they come out with an answer maybe today.
Agreed, yeah. You know, again, I think, let's not discount the fact that, number one, we had the CDC guidance come out. The governor said he was going to lament it for a little while and decide whether or not. Then on the same day that he announces his tax return and the $5 million book deal, he's also, oh, look over here, we're going to take away the mask mandate. And now we have a state of confusion. So I agree, there should be, you know, there should be some guidance, and hopefully as soon as possible. And I don't fault OGS, I don't fault the Secretary of the Senate. I just think that we need some guidance.
On the pace of the Assembly impeachment probe, do you think it's taken too long? It's been nearly over 2 months. There's no plans thus far for a third meeting. By the way, are any of you on the Judiciary Committee? Okay. So some of your colleagues are. Do you think it's taking too long? It's largely a political process, and if so, what's the holdup from your colleagues?
Sure. We're venturing a little bit far from the bill, but I will be happy to answer your question. I do think it's taking too long. I think there's enough evidence right now, which is why our conference, Leader Barclay did put forth a resolution on impeachment. I'm comfortable supporting that. I think the chair of the committee, I'm not questioning his intentions, but he did say it was going to be a matter of months, not weeks. It's now been over months. It's been well over 2 months. We are well overdue for an update. I do trust and have faith in members, specific members that are on that committee that I know are trying to do the right thing. But I know people are also probably trying to drag this out as long as they can. And people deserve better than that. Again, so many of our colleagues have called for resignations and impeachment. And then, well, we'll sign on to our bill.
Do you think Speaker Hasty and Chairman Levine are trying to stall?
Got it right, I'm sorry.
You got it. I can't speak to that. I don't know.
Some people are trying to stall. So who do you think is trying to do that?
I think there's some members. It's a diverse committee with other members, and I just can speak for the ones I know very well in my conference. That I'm speaking specifically for them. I have faith in them. Any other questions? Anything specifically about the bill too?